Okay, this is 1985 Under an Iron Sky from Thin Red Line Games. We are looking at the full campaign game for this particular module. There's three modules. There's Sacred Oil that covers the war in the Persian Gulf, and you've also got Deadly Northern Lights, which covers the war in Scandinavia and the Arctic. Now, this video here is a quick introduction. It's not a game that's been heavily covered in terms of videos and things on YouTube, but I noticed the Gimpy Gamer has done a set of videos where he's pretty much done an introduction and then gone through some of the mechanics of the game turns. And he's done a reasonable job. I can't complain about that. I think his introduction one is better. It's going to be better than the one I'm just about to do. It's a lot more comprehensive. Now, in terms of the game itself, map's absolutely beautiful. Now, I would say it's less functional because of its beauty, which is a shame. I found that the hexes and then the actual little hex identifiers were very difficult to read. I had to break out the magnifying glass constantly, and also the counters have got these little numbers on that tell you where the unit starts in the hex. I had to get the magnifying glass out for all those. And that's probably due to the fact that my eyes are getting old and useless rather than anything else. It's a nice bright colours. The thing even Gimpy pointed out was the fact that particularly some units like the Americans, they sort of bleed into the scenery because of the colour of the counters, which is no great shakes, but you could quite easily miss American counters. I'm probably not going to suffer from that because I'll be marking every single unit that's actually moved, so I can see quite clearly moved or done. When I say move, it's actually done its sort of activation. Now, other things we've got play aids come with the game. Nice, decent card stuff. Can't complain about them. Could do with a little more colour. There is a train effects one that has the actual train picture on the car. We'll just go way over here and you can see it. It's got a nice picture of the terrain and all the appropriate effects and things, so that's pretty good. There's like multiple sets of these play aids so both players can have one. We've got these little airfield box things where you keep all your aircraft when they're not actually fighting. Yet again, decent enough stuff. Gives you the name of the airfield, where it is, what unit types can use it, what nationalities, and they have like an active box and a used box on them as well, so you know which ones have actually flown missions on this turn. Counters, they're fairly thin white core counters, but they're very substantial. I can't say there's anything wrong with them, apart from the fact that they don't punch out very well. They're not brilliantly die cut, and you're gonna have to either clip them or you're gonna have to use scissors on them. I don't know why I've still got these yellow markers on here. They don't belong on there. As I've said about the colours of the various units, they're pretty clear, but I think some of the Americans, West Germans, and tend to blend in a bit with the background of the map, which isn't epic. It's a complicated game. Now, I've played its predecessor, which is called The Next War, about 40 years ago. I played that. That is a Similar game. Well, it's exactly the same map, but nowhere near as artistic and colourful as this. But it sets the game in 1978, I think, whereas this one's set in 1985. These games are incredibly difficult to get your hands on. They're very expensive second-hand. They sell out really quickly. Now I believe this one is a second edition, but they're on the fourth edition of this, and they call them echelons. So when you see something like second echelon or fourth echelon, it means fourth edition, second edition, etc. The other modules are even harder to get hold of than this. I'm looking around, but I can't find any being sold at a reasonable price at the moment. They're actually in Europe. I'm just trying to think. Is there anything? Oh yeah, with the rule book. Rule book. It's an unusual format in the fact that it's like single thing. I like this format. Some people don't. Some people prefer the old double column format where you'd have a lot less pages than you have it in this particular way of printing. It's got contents at the front. It hasn't got an index, which not something I'm too keen on, but you can download a copy and just search if you want to find stuff. So using a tablet. Yeah, for 2018 game, maybe I wouldn't expect an index. I certainly would expect one from a modern game. I've had a look on Board Game Geek. There didn't seem to be any real stuff on there that was worth printing off or what I considered to be important. I've made one of these. This is something I made when I played the original The Next War game. It's just a way of actually recording. As you activate a unit, you use up its movement points, and then once you go over 20, you start getting into fatigue and stuff. And when you're fighting, each side will actually build up a set of modifiers on the actual board. And I found that having this sort of thing, it was much easier than constantly having to refer to this and having to refer to the charts for the modifications that you apply when you're playing the game. It's just something I've invented. I don't know whether it's going to work for this version. I don't see why not. It should. They are effectively the same game, except this one has been beautified. In terms of the rule book, it comes in at 56 pages, which is probably coming a lot less than that if it was double columned. Which is not an incredibly complicated game, but I would say mechanically it's not an easy one. Because of the way it plays, like you'll activate units and then you can start bringing stuff in. You know, you could bring in air units to start suppressing flak or trying to actually damage or interdict units on the ground, and then other stuff can come in, and then helicopters and special forces. So an activation for one unit could explode into quite a complicated set of maneuvers and attacks with all the support units that are available. So I noticed on this one they got rid of the naval game because the naval game wasn't particularly brilliant in the next war. But it's a shame. I think they should have tried to put it into this. I know the Deadly Northern Lights and the Gulf one have naval modules. Maybe they even allow you to extend their naval modules into the Baltic. It would have been nice to have the naval stuff, but it didn't really have a huge impact on the actual game itself. Another thing they have done is they've changed the air system considerably. Now, the old air system, it was much easier to work with. You basically got all your aircraft, stuck them in your air superiority box, your interdiction box, or your ground support box, and then you just pull them off and bring them into the game as needed. But this is you're actually fighting over these mega hexes where you're trying. See this where it says 2-2? That's inside a white hex, a big mega hex. It's not immediately clear from looking here, and you're fighting over those rather than having aircraft just deployed across the entire front. In terms of what you can do, there are a lot of optional units, optional things in this. You can go absolutely mad and do bookkeeping extraordinaire, where you can keep a track of the fuel and ammo of every single unit. I would say don't do that unless you are absolutely insane. No, just don't even go there. There's quite a few scenarios. I suppose if you were playing one of the smaller scenarios, you could get away with it. In terms of scenarios here, I'm trying to think what we've got. We've got some smaller ones. Well, Checkpoint Charlie is probably the easiest one, which is just Berlin. So there's hardly any units on that. That's a good introductory one. But even so, if you're playing Checkpoint Charlie, you're going to be using helicopters, aircraft, infantry, armour. You're pretty much using everything in the game. Obviously, you've not got all the campaign extras, and you've not got chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, and all that sort of guff coming into it. You've got Battle for the Fulda Gap. Not just one that covers Northern Europe. It's starting to get more and more complicated as you go on. There's one that covers southern part of the map, Italy, Austria, places like that, Northern Balkans. Then you got your campaign games. There's 3 different campaign games. It really depends how you want the war to start. But even if you do say I pick the first one, which is the quick start one, I don't have to start quickly. You can use gradual tension, building up tension and everything. These really just change the way things set up, and they change the victory point conditions, etc. Whereas if you play the campaign game 1, there's lots of different options, and you're not really tied down to playing the war in a strict, it starts at this turn, it ends at this turn. There's quite a bit of flexibility in this system for preparing the battle before you actually start fighting, by doing manoeuvring units before the battle, and actually you can bring in reinforcements from several turns without actually triggering the war. All in all, as you say, we're looking at it on the table. This is a 10-foot by 4-foot table. Pretty much fills everything. I've got some stuff mounted on the walls, but if I put everything on the table, it would fill the whole thing. In terms of how long it lasts, now, I can only say I've played the next war, and that took me about 3 months before NATO actually threw in the towel. Now, the thing I did with that one, I gave the Warsaw Pact a surprise attack, and they had the use of chemical weapons at the start of the game, so NATO pretty much had no chance in that game. Whereas this one, I'm going to do it with a short preparation on both sides, then a turn one surprise attack. So NATO aren't going to be completely overwhelmed. I'm not going to use chemical weapons straight away because that really does give the Warsaw Pact. Well, it did in the original version. I don't know whether the two sides are more equal in terms of chemical weapons on this one. The other things we've got, not only does it cover helicopters, you've got transport helicopters, attack helicopters, you've got flat batteries, fixed, mobile flat batteries, you've got artillery regiments, anti-aircraft artillery regiments, you've got electronic warfare units, special forces, you've got paratroopers. Did I mention SSMs for surface-to-surface missiles, where you can actually deliver chemical warheads onto units or air bases and stuff? And as I mentioned, we've got all the aircraft. You've got different types of aircraft, bombers. You've got air superiority fighters. You've got intermediate fighters that can do ground attack and do some air superiority fighting. You've got reconnaissance units. As I say, you can go absolutely berserk with this and have things like tracking all the ammo and tracking the fuel. You can go pretty crazy with this game, to be quite honest. But just beware that when you start it, you could easily find a small area you could escalate. Like, I'm going to start with the attack on Berlin, and that could bring in quite a lot of stuff. I don't expect NATO to make any attempt to gain air superiority in Berlin. It will, so they'll probably not even bother fighting an air war over there. No, they could do. Right, that's it for me rambling. Now, if anyone wants to know what happened to the other game where I was playing the Pacific War, I basically finished the bit where you've got the Japanese are pretty much running rampant, and got onto the bit where the Allies and the Japanese had a reasonable amount of command points. The problem with that is it doesn't solo very well. You really sort of forcing it because you know exactly where your enemy units are going to fight. You're getting into this little transitionary period where the Americans want to be able to use their carriers and things, but they don't want to go head to head with the Japanese carriers. Whereas later, when you're sort of fighting over stuff like Guadalcanal, both sides are pretty much know where they're going to put their main efforts in. Anyway, so I stopped it because it didn't really solo very well from that point onwards. But I haven't completely removed it. Anyway, oh god, this is 18 minutes, this video.